At this time, we are now taking on the artists and activists panel with some extraordinary special guests. So without further ado, I'd like just to introduce briefly who we have in person and on Zoom, and then open up a dialogue and conversation just around all things arts, culture, activism, and the Black Panther Party as a whole. So I'll start at the far end and then work our way all the way to Zoom.
First of all, I want to say all power to the people. My name is John Creer. My comrades call me Bunchy. I joined the party at the age of 19 in 1971 here in Houston, Texas. In 1972, I transferred to Central Headquarters in Oakland, California, where I worked for several years. In 1977, I went to Las Vegas and established a chapter of the Black Panther Party in Las Vegas, Nevada. And I'm glad all y'all showed up. Appreciate you.
My name is Solly at the time. It's Gail, and it's a Solly at the time that I was a member of the Black Panther Party. I'm from the Oakland, Berkeley Bay Area, San Francisco Bay Area. My husband, Melvin Dixon, and I, we moved to Seattle, and in 1969 began serving in the free breakfast program, joined the Seattle chapter of the Black Panther Party in 1970, came back down to the Bay Area at the same time as Bunchy in 1972. At that time, I was recruited to be on the newspaper, to help with the newspaper, and I performed in all aspects of the newspaper, layout, typesetting. And I was the only female artist, woman artist, from 72 to 74. And I was I was at the Oakland Community School until 1976.
All power to the people, free Palestine.
All power to the people.
I was born in Chicago. My family left Chicago when I was about 8 years old, and we moved to Seattle. And in 1968, I was appointed captain of the Seattle chapter, the first chapter outside of the state of California. And in 1972, most of our comrades in Seattle, we were transferred down to Oakland to be part of the centralization program. And in Oakland, I worked in various capacities, and maybe we can talk about some of those things that I was involved in as we get more into our discussion.
Good afternoon, everyone. I am Reverend Dr. Keith Somerville, known as Pastor Keith or PK, depending on your age category. Originally from Brooklyn, New York, but I am the proud pastor, senior pastor here at Riverside United Methodist Church. And I want to welcome each and every one of you into this space. And thank you.
Hello, everybody. I'm Dr. Xavier Buck. I'm originally from Los Angeles, California. I spent some time in New York at St. John's University and as an organizer there in Queens. I did my PhD in history at the University of California, Berkeley, and happened to be merely a student of the Black Panther Party in my role as the executive director of the Dr. Huey P. Newton Foundation. I work with Frederica Newton, who is the widow of Huey P. Newton, and a team of Panthers who I just listen to and figure out how to preserve this history in the best way possible.
Thank you for that. And then I'd like to turn it over to Emory Douglas on Zoom. Emory, can you hear me?
They I can't hear that well because like a house sound echo.
Okay, what? Let's see if we can get you situated. 1 second. So Mr. Emory Douglas, if you could just introduce yourself. Everybody can hear you. Okay.
Okay, and introduce myself. My name is Henry Douglas, former Minister Culture, Revolution artist of the Black Panther Party. Came involved with the Black Panther Party 3 months after conception, late January of 1967, in the Black Panther Party. And I guess that, I don't know if that's enough introduction. As we go into the questions or whatever else that is going to be asked of me, I'll be happy to respond. But yes, and I came involved and worked on the initiative on patrols. And the paper initially started prior to the Black Panther Party. Started out, I got involved in doing the patrols and what have you. And involved with the initiative, doing work on the paper itself. Before we even had the central headquarters or anything like that. And that was my first involvement when I was given, wanted me to do the production aspect of the paper itself. So that became my responsibility initially.
Thank you. And then I would like to, I have the distinct honor, I'm Rue Rob. I have the distinct honor of moderating today's panel discussion. I also serve as the 3rd Ward Cultural Arts District Manager with Project Row Houses here in the Tray. Shout out to the Tray. Shout out to 3rd Ward. And with that, I would just now like to turn it back over to our panelists. If you could just briefly share either your earliest memory or how you got involved with your work with the Black Panther Party, or how you came to know about the Black Panther Party if you weren't directly involved or related. And they can kind of, you can chime in as you see fit.
I guess I'll go first. I was a student at the University of Washington and one of the founding members of the Black Student Union at the University of Washington. And so we were doing a lot of work in terms of trying to develop the BSU. We were also trying to raise our political awareness. So we followed very closely about what was happening in California, in Oakland in particular. And after Martin Luther King's assassination, a handful of us were arrested and put in the King County Jail. And when we got out, we headed to Oakland, California, to a Black Student Union conference that was being held at San Francisco State. Now, when the day after Martin Luther King's death, a member of the Black Panther Party, one of the original members of the Black Panther Party, Little Bobby Hutton, was murdered by the Oakland Police Department. And so while we were there in San Francisco, we heard about the funeral of Little Bobby Hutton. So we went over to Oakland and we got an opportunity to witness the memories that were given to Little Bobby Hutton and to view him in his casket and to see members of the Black Panther Party that were in attendance at the time. Later on that evening, Bobby Seale came over to San Francisco State and gave a keynote address regarding the murder of Little Bobby Hutton and about what the Black Panther Party was about. And when he concluded, my brother and I and Anthony Ware, another comrade of ours, we made a direct beeline to where Bobby Seale was and told him we wanted to have a chapter of the Black Panther Party in Seattle. Well, a week later we get a call that Bobby Seale was coming to Seattle. He came to Seattle and he helped us to designate Seattle as the first chapter of the Black Panther Party outside the state of California, and I was appointed captain. We're talking about April '68, and there was a lot of things that were going on in America in April '68. A lot of rage was being exhibited by the black community and black people, and we had this organization called the Black Panther Party for self-defense, and so when we opened up our office in Seattle, it was like a non-stop running. It was like I look at my 10 years in the Black Panther Party, it was like running the 100-yard dash every day. That's how intense it was. And that's how every day there was something that was occurring in relationship to Black America and relationship to the Black Panther Party. And I was very young, 19 years old, and so having to try to develop this chapter, and a lot of the people that were coming in were older than I was, but I had dedicated myself to following orders from central headquarters, and I wouldn't let anything derail me from what the orders were that I got from central headquarters. So, the first, by November, we lost our first comrade. He was killed by the Seattle Police Department. He was 17 years old, Welton Armstead. And I presided over his funeral as a 19-year-old. And I remember this feeling of ice that came over me while I was standing in there. I was standing in front of the family and the party members, and it was like my whole demeanor changed, that whatever I was before, I was a new person then at that moment. And it was just very intense. I mean, we'll have a chance to talk about more things, but about a week later, I was called down to Oakland to experience what it was like being in the Black Panther Party. That's where I met Robert Bay and Landon Williams and Randy Williams, some of the original members of the Black Panther Party. They were all captains, and they took me under their wing and showed me around. I went out and sold papers. I sat in a Central Committee meeting at Don Cox's house, the field marshal of the Black Panther Party. Stokely Carmichael was there, David Hilliard was there, Captain Crutch was there, Emory Douglas was there. That's where I met Emory, and it was just, I was 19 years old sitting in the company of these dedicated revolutionaries. And one of the things that happened the next day is I was with Landon and Randy and Robert Bay, three captains of the Black Panther Party, and we ended up on 7th Street in West Oakland, and with our Panther uniforms on. And I won't go into detail, but we ended up in a standoff with the Oakland Police Department. It was 5 of us, and it was about 15 members of the Oakland Police Department. They had their hands on their weapons, and we had our hands on our weapons. And it could have gone either way. It could have been a bloodbath. But we stood them down. They backed off, they got into their police cars and took off. And that was my baptism into the Black Panther Party.
Hello again, and I just want to say that I'm very honored to be here, and I think this is a wonderful event that you all are putting on. How did I become involved with the Black Panther Party? By the time I graduated from school, this is '66, and I'm going to the community college, Laney Community College. And I hear there's a lot of activity going on at Merritt Community College. And the art movement, the artists that are participating and becoming very vocal and expressive is becoming very loud on the West Coast to the point where I'm hearing that it's the Harlem Renaissance of the West Coast. And so the artists are expressing community and unity. And there's a lot of political activity going on at Merritt College. And so I go over to Merritt College and I become involved in the Black Student Union. And the classes over there that I'm taking, I'm learning about African history through the art of the African masks from Professor Claude Clark. He is a carryover from the Harlem Renaissance period, and he was one of the artists from the 1930s that benefited from the government program, the WPA program. So, and there are a lot of drama artists and art, a lot of art going on. And so I'm beginning to become socially conscious. In high school, I wasn't conscious hardly at all. But, you know, a lot can happen in a year. And so I'm becoming more socially conscious. And I'm becoming conscious not only through the words, but I'm becoming conscious through pictures and images. And then I'm becoming politically conscious because there's a rally at what is called the Oakland Auditorium to free Huey Newton, and Stokely Carmichael is speaking. And I'm hearing about Black power, and Black is beautiful, and H. Rap Brown is speaking. And I'm hearing about the power that we have, the psychological power, and the strength that we have in numbers and unity. And my mother is also changing and turning around and becoming more aware. And my husband, he was my boyfriend at the time, Melvin Dixon, and we're over at my mother's house listening to, oh, you guys probably aren't even aware of this, 33 and Third record albums of Malcolm X speeches. We're over at my mother's house and we're listening to Malcolm X speeches. And I am becoming more, I'm hearing more about the Black Panther Party, but they're still periphery for me. And then in '68, I joined a boycott at Housewives Market to protest the death of little Bobby Hutton. It's a two-pronged protest. Not only are we protesting the death of little Bobby Hutton and therefore police brutality and therefore police patrolling our communities, but, and actually, I'm more raised up in North Oakland, but we're also dealing with the fact that this is a market that caters to the Black community, but does not hire the Black community. So I'm becoming more and more politically aware. But I think what led me to the Black Panther Party started even before then. Because as a child, I grew up with food insecurity issues. And if we had a free breakfast program then, I probably would have been one of the children going to the free breakfast program. But I grew up with food insecurity issues and housing insecurity issues and discrimination issues because I grew up on 40th Street where the railroad tracks ran down, and they were digging up the railroad tracks to make room for more cars on the freeway and the highway and the streets. And so there were piles of dirt. And so the black kids, the black community lived in the middle of the block on 40th Street. And so we all played, and the dirt was piled up in front of our apartment house. And so we all played on this mountain of dirt. And the kids that lived on the either side of the black section of 40th Street were white children. And they came to the middle of the block to play with the black children. And it was just a matter of fact, colored folks aren't allowed to live in our building. So it was just a matter of fact. So I think society was grooming me to be a part of the Black Panther Party from the time that I was a child. And then at the time when the Harlem Renaissance comes to the West Coast, I'm opening up to an awareness of who I am and who I am in this society and who I am as a black person in this society. And then the Black Panther Party comes along and it's like, here's an avenue for change. And so by the time I get married, my husband and I, we decide to move to Seattle. And that's where we started working in the free breakfast program. And then that is where we decide to join the Black Panther Party because I know, and I know he knew too, truly felt that here was an opportunity, a way to bring about a change from an unjust system to a just system. And I'll stop there.
So much of what she said and what Evan said is true. Because I think about, people ask me that all the time, and I think about too, like she said, it started, because when you're born in segregation, like young people now, they read about it, they talk about it, and some people say, well, we need to go back. But to be born in segregation when your whole world is white, where everything is white, everything on TV is white, all your heroes are white. I had 3 books on Sam Houston, Alexander the Great, all these white folks. Everything was white. And when I got, of course, then you get to the civil rights movement, and we went through all that, and then we got to the point in the 60s where black people were kind of, hey, well, we're black and not real proud. But when I was in, back when the party was found out, I was in junior high school. By the time I got to high school, the party had become big. You had Bobby Seale, a group of members of the party, went to the state capitol in California to protest the law because they wanted to ban the open carry of guns. Of course they did that because it's black people. So they went to protest that. Bobby was arrested, but that made national news. And that's when a lot of chapters started. People said, man, like Bobby said one time, there was some of that, and people were like, well, what kind of niggas are these? You know what I mean? They out there with guns, stand up to these white folks. So then you became aware. And then, of course, Huey getting arrested for allegedly murdering a policeman and one another, that became national news. Then you had the murder of Fred Hampton in Chicago, which was national news. And then 3 days after that, 2 or 3 days after that, you had the raid on the office and central headquarters in Los Angeles, 41st and Central. If any of y'all, you need to see it. It's called 41st and Central. It's a documentary on that siege of our office there. You can find it on Netflix or some of these streaming services. But so I was growing up in LA at that time. And I remember when the siege happened at Central, 41st and Central. The school I went to, for one thing, was 80% white, mainly Jewish. But we had some progressive teachers, and we walked out twice. And most of the white students walked out with me. Walked out the first time to support a black school, Fremont High School in LA, because Fremont had walked out because of the conditions of their school. the inadequate conditions of their school, the books, the building, the whole thing. So we walked out in support of them. But not only did we walk out in support of them, we had our own grievances. We said we wanted a back studies curriculum. We wanted to abolish the dress code, you know, because you couldn't wear shorts, you couldn't wear beards, you couldn't wear sandals, and especially real strict on female students because you dress had to be a certain way, that whole thing. So anyway, we got all our conditions we wanted to. And then when 41st and Central happened, I had a photography teacher because I wanted to be a sports photographer. Miss Green, she was Jewish. So while this whole siege is going on of our office, she brought a radio to class so we could listen to the whole thing. And and I remember after that, it was a bunch of rallies, huge rallies to raise money for the Panthers because all them brothers and sisters got incarcerated, jailed. And I remember going downtown to City Hall, in front of City Hall, it was thousands, 4,000 or 5,000 people. And that's the first time I heard Elaine Brown speak. And Joan Kelly, who I didn't know at the time, I was able to work with it later in the open. And so that's when I really got into the party. And I started wearing a black beret in school. And I remember my mother, she told me to stop wearing the black beret. She told me, she said, I support everything that the Black Panther Party is about. She said, but I don't want you to get hurt. I don't want you wearing that black beret. So what I would do, I was once I left home, I would put it on and wear it to school. So I remember she found it, she cut it up. And the thing, once I graduated from high school, like I said, it's a sign of the time. You had people going everywhere. You had the Watch Rise, which was the first major uprising here in Detroit. I mean, you know, blacks are pushing. And when I got to college, we had, like a dorm room, we had our own little club. We called it the Chamber Member Party. It was a sign on my dorm room door, the Chamber Member Party. And I started, I have a friend, two friends. They asked me would I like to go to a political education class for the Black Panther Party. I said, sure. And we went, and because you see people on TV, and that's why I like people to understand that we were human beings. We had brothers, fathers, sisters, brothers. So, I go, I'm not trying to test who you're going to see. And they were some of the most humble and nice people I had ever met. You know, we had the class, and afterwards they asked us if we'd like to have dinner. And we were like, no, not because we was hungry, but we were thinking these brothers and sisters struggling so much that they did. But they insisted, so we ate. So I started selling papers on the weekends with a brother named James Palms. And I always was having an inkling I wanted to join the party, but really what pushed me over the edge was I was home from school one day, because I went to school in the San Fernando Valley, which is right outside of Los Angeles. So I was home for the weekend, and I'm in my bedroom, you know, listening to some music, just chilling. And my mother comes in the bedroom and she said, Ricky, that's my nickname, family nickname. She said, it's two white gentlemen in the living room. They're from the FBI and they want to talk to you. And I said, Mom, get out of here. Don't be playing with me like that. She said, no, I'm serious. She said, I'm serious. There's two white gentlemen in the living room and they want to talk to you. And I'm thinking all kind of shit in my mind. I'm like, excuse the language. And I'm like, what do they want to talk to me for? You know, I'm thinking, maybe they heard me talking about smoking weed on the phone. I'm just thinking about all kinds of stuff. So I get up there, shooting up there, or sitting on the couch. They pull their badges out. And they said they had some questions for me, so I sat down. So they said, you remember the Black Panther Party? I said, no, I'm not remember the Black Panther Party. So they had this big binder with all these pictures. So they started wondering, well, do you know this person? Do you know that person? I said, no. And we really made me proud of my mother. In the middle of the whole thing, she stopped. She said, y'all asking all these questions. She said, I got 3 questions for y'all. They said, yes, ma'am. She said that J. Edgar Hoover says that the Black Panther Party is the greatest threat to the security of the United States in the history of the United States. She said, what about the mob? They said, oh, well, man, yeah. And she said, well, you know, the Black Panther Party, like, well, they started playing soft and they said, well, you know, the Black Panther Party do a lot of good things. They got free breakfast program, they got free health clinics, and that. And other good, yeah, but you know, when they started talking about that violence and all this stuff. So it really pushed me over the edge. Really, the join the parties, when they was walking out the door, they turned around, they said, John, they said, you just stay in school. graduate from college, get you a good job, you will never hear from us again. So I'm thinking, God damn, they trying to tell me how to live my life. That I walk this straight and narrow path, but they'll never see me.